In March 2012, at Baofusi Bridge in Beijing, a mysterious car crash occurred. A Ferrari sports car, travelling at high speed, slammed into the bridge wall on the North 4th Ring Road. After rumours swirled across the country for months, former Guizhou Party Secretary Li Zhanshu suddenly went to Beijing and took up the post of Deputy Director of the General Office of the CCP Central Committee, presiding over day-to-day work. Soon afterward, he replaced the then all-powerful Ling Jihua as Director of the General Office. On the eve of the CCP's 18th National Congress, a historically significant leadership transition, this sudden appointment shocked the entire country. People could not help asking, who is Li Zhanshu? Why was it Li Zhanshu who took over as Director of the General Office? Whose man is he? Is he from the Youth League faction or the Xi faction? Today, we will tell the story of Li Zhanshu. Li Zhanshu, many people assume he came from an ordinary commoner family. In fact, he also came from an official family lineage. His grand-uncle, the 4th great-uncle in the family, Li Zhanshu, joined the Communist Party as early as 1927. After the founding of the PRC, he served as the party committee secretary of the All China Federation of Trade Unions and as a standing committee member of Shandong Province, as well as a vice-governor. Unfortunately, he had already passed away in 1967. The person who had a direct influence on Li Zhanshu was his uncle, Li Zhengtong. Li Zhengtong enlisted in 1937, followed General Wang Zhen, and took part in the 100 Regiment's offensive and the defense of Yan'an. He was killed in Shaanxi in 1949. After Li Zhengtong died, Li Zhanshu's father spent more than 30 days travelling day and night transporting his coffin back to their hometown in Hebei. Li Zhanshu later recalled that his uncle had sent many letters home from the battlefield. Based on those letters, his father named his son Zhanshu, battle letters, to express his longing for Zhengtong. In fact, Li Zhanshu's 4th great-uncle and his uncle both died very early. The influence they brought to Li Zhanshu was minimal, and it would have been hard for them to provide any substantive help. The reason Li Zhanshu kept telling these two stories himself was that the red background of these two relatives could give him the aura of being politically purebred. This is the same logic as Jiang Zemin desperately tying himself to his adoptive father Jiang Shangqing. It is also the same logic as Liu Bei constantly emphasizing that he was a descendant of the Prince of Zhongshan of the Han imperial clan. Li Zhanshu's starting point was not high. Living through the 10 years of the Cultural Revolution, his first credential was graduation from the Shijiazhuang Regional Finance and Trade School. His early ideal was to become a journalist, of course. That wish did not come true. At age 22, he entered the office of the Shijiazhuang Regional Bureau of Commerce. 4 years later, he transferred to the Document and Materials section of the Prefectural Party Committee office. At that time, he was still just an ordinary cadre. Then, at that time, young comrade Li Zhanshu did something big, something others would not even dare to imagine. He wrote a letter to then CCP General Secretary Hu Yaobang. In the letter, he suggested loudly singing "Socialism is good" and changing the original lyric "Rightists want to rebel but can't" into "Reactionaries want to rebel but can't," because this letter hit the social ills of the time when society was questioning socialism. Comrade Yaobang, approachable and down-to-earth, forwarded it with instructions to the propaganda department, and it was published on page 4 of the People's Daily on May 26, 1982. The byline read, Li Zhanshu, Shijiazhuang Prefectural Party Committee Office, Hebei Province, Communist Party of China. Li Zhanshu's name then rose sharply. He drew the attention of the Shijiazhuang Prefectural Party Committee and even the main leaders of the Hebei Provincial Party Committee, and he began his early skipping grades path. At 33, he was promoted to Party Secretary of Wuji County in Shijiazhuang. In the same period, next door in Zhengding County, a county party secretary of roughly the same age arrived, Xi Jinping. The two youngest county party secretaries in Hebei thus met and became close friends, beginning a friendship of more than 40 years. In 1985, the most important patron in the first half of Li Zhanshu's life, Xing Chongzhi, took over as the first secretary of the Hebei Provincial Party Committee. Xing Chongzhi had long worked in youth affairs earlier in life. In the 1,950 seconds, he worked in the General Office of the Communist Youth League Central Committee and was fairly familiar with the then Youth League Secretary, Hu Yaobang. His thinking was relatively open-minded. He was considered a fairly upright cadre, a reform-minded person, and he consistently cared about young cadres. During his tenure, Xi Jinping deeply understood the importance of talent for regional development, and he vigorously promoted a batch of young and capable officials. Among them was the protagonist of this video, Li Zhanshu. And in that same year, amid the wave of cadre youngerization, 5-year-old Li Zhanshu was promoted to Deputy Secretary of the Shijiazhuang Prefectural Party Committee and Commissioner of the Administrative Office, becoming a young department-level official, prefecture-level Zhongting, and moreover the administrative chief of a provincial capital. He stayed less than a year as Shijiazhuang Commissioner. At 36, Li Zhanshu was appointed Secretary of the Hebei Provincial Youth League Committee. In the 1,980 seconds, the Communist Youth League experienced the most democratic and most active period in its history. Exchanges between the Youth League Central Committee and the Provincial Youth League Committees were very equal, and both public and private interactions were extremely frequent. Even an ordinary low-rank official getting married could invite Li Keqiang and other Secretariat members to officiate as witnesses. As the Youth League Committee closest to Beijing, the Hebei Provincial Youth League had even more near-water, near-pavilion advantages. At the end of 1,985, Hu Jintao had just left the post of First Secretary of the Youth League Central Committee, and Song Deifu took over. During Li Zhanshu's term as Hebei Youth League Secretary from 1,986 to 1,990, the Youth League Central Secretariat included Liu Yandong, Li Yuanchao, Li Keqiang, Liu Qibao, and others. One can believe that in those 4 years as a Youth League Secretary, Li Zhanshu built a decidedly unharmonious relationship with colleagues at the Youth League Central Committee. In that sense, one could say Li Zhanshu was also a member of the Youth League faction. In 1993, after serving as Commissioner of Chengde for 3 years, Li Zhanshu finally had his first leap in his official career. Over 8 years in department-level posts, Li Zhanshu not only improved his resume and demonstrated his abilities, he also further gained the high recognition of then Hebei Party Secretary Xi Jinping. In the same period, Song Deifu was transferred from the Youth League Central Committee to become a Vice Minister of the Organisation Department. With Secretary Xi Jinping's strong backing and Song Deifu's assistance, 3-year-old Li Zhanshu became a Hebei Provincial Party Standing Committee member and Secretary General, becoming a vice ministerial level official. He completed the most difficult leap of his career, formally entering the ranks of senior party state officials. However, young comrade Li Zhanshu had not been happy for long before he had the darkest moment of his life. Secretary Xi Jinping quickly retreated to the second line. When Xi Jinping was about to step down, the old man clearly opposed Chen Weigao becoming the new Hebei Party Secretary. He gave 3 reasons. First, Chen Weigao understood the economy but not politics, suitable as a governor, not suitable as a party secretary. Second, he could not do unity work. He could not unite the leadership team or unite people. Third, his work was rough and his style was rough. However, Xi Jinping's opinion was not adopted. Jiang Zemin, who was then presiding over the party centre's day-to-day work, did not trust Hu Yaobang's old team very much. On the contrary, he felt Chen Weigao suited his own taste better. There were also rumours that Jiang and Chen Weigao became close friends at first sight. After Chen Weigao's incident, the central punishment for him was only the removal of full provincial level treatment, while still maintaining vice-provincial level treatment, also the result of Jiang Zemin making a call. In 1993, six-year-old Xi Jinping retreated to the second line and became a standing committee member of the CPP-CC National Committee. It is easy to imagine what attitude Chen Weigao would have toward Li Zhanshu, who had been vigorously promoted by the predecessor secretary who explicitly opposed him. Although Li Zhanshu was the provincial secretary general, he was not trusted by Chen Weigao. Fortunately, young comrade Li Zhanshu always served his direct superior with extreme caution. Facing various forms of picking on him, he always greeted them with a smile. endured extraordinarily, and tried his best to get along well with them. As a provincial standing committee member and secretary general, Li Zhanshu's actual power was not even as great as Cheng Weigao's secretary, Li Zhen. How many cold-faces or even humiliations Li Zhanshu suffered in those years, we do not know. Fortunately, Li Zhanshu's personality itself was quite compliant and soft, without so many sharp edges. In 1997, after his relationship with Li Zhen and others deteriorated, Li Zhanshu was removed from the post of Secretary General and became an empty provincial standing committee member, only hanging the title of deputy head of the provincial rural work leading group. He was marginalised. His experience triggered a strong reaction locally, and many people sympathised with the injustice he suffered. The 3 years beginning in 1997 were the three most depressed years of Li Zhanshu's life. The good luck of the preceding years seemed to suddenly leave him, turning him from a skipping grade student into a repeating grade student. This is also a feature of official careers. No one's career is smooth sailing. There are always a few years, even 10 years or more, spent on the insignificant margins, hovering and waiting on one platform. Even a lucky son like Xi Jinping had several times of frustration. In 1998, Li Zhanshu desperately fled, transferring from Hebei to Shaanxi province to serve as a provincial standing committee member. In this period, the Shaanxi provincial standing committee was actually already fully staffed. Li Zhanshu spent 2 years as deputy head of the rural work leading group and director of its office, with little real power, essentially idling for 2 years. In 2000, after 2 years of inspection and observation, then Shaanxi Party Secretary Li Zhengwei began to appreciate Li Zhanshu and successively selected him to serve as Shaanxi Organization Minister and Party Secretary of Xi'an. At the end of 2000, a Baishui County farmer, Wang Jixiao, was once mistakenly listed by a township police station as one of the troublemakers in the village and almost got arrested. Terrified, he hid for 6 days in a broken earthen cave outside the village, suffering hunger and cold, and his health was damaged as a result. The newly appointed organisation minister, Li Zhanshu, personally visited Wang Jixiao's home and apologised to him on behalf of the party committee. This was not common in Shaanxi at that time. After arriving in Xi'an, Li Zhanshu proposed the goal of building China's Xi'an into the best city in the western region, and fix Xi'an's future development positioning as a city most suitable for entrepreneurship, development, and residential living. During that period, some Shaanxi people who lived elsewhere were pleasantly surprised when returning home to find Xi'an changing more and more. The second ring road was connected. The railway station linked to the city wall. West Avenue was renovated. The north square of the giant Wild Goose Pagoda was expanded. And in 2003, the Kujiang New District was formally established, marking that Xi'an's urban construction truly entered a fast lane. It is said that after Li Zhanshu was transferred to Heilongjiang, a Xi'an traffic police officer once told a Heilongjiang driver passing through Xi'an, "Please bring a message to your Vice Governor Li Zhanshu. Our Xi'an people miss him." Shaanxi also had a special aspect. Xi Zhongxun had carried out revolutionary work there, and Xi Jinping had once been sent down there as an educated youth. Shaanxi is Xi Jinping's spiritual hometown and also a place the Xi family needed to visit often. While in Shaanxi, Li Zhanshu maintained continuous interactions with the Xi family. In June 2000, Li Zhanshu accompanied Xi Jinping's mother, Qi Xin, his sister Qi Qiaoqiao, his younger brother, Xi Wenping, and the editors of selected works of Xi Zhongxun to pay tribute to the Hebei Revolutionary Martyrs Memorial and took a group photo in front of the monument. When Xi Zhongxun died in 2002, Li Zhanshu, then Deputy Secretary of the Shaanxi Provincial Party Committee and Party Secretary of Xi'an, sent a condolence telegram. As a junior who has been nurtured by Comrade Xi's thought and spirit, I hereby express my deepest mourning and most profound remembrance for Comrade Xi, and extend cordial greetings to Elder Qi Jin and all relatives. Later, when the symposium on Xi Zhongxun's revolutionary career was held at the Great Hall of the People, Li Zhanshu also made a special trip to Beijing to attend. At that time, Xi Jinping was only a provincial-level cadre, with no sign yet of being a crown prince. After 3 years in Shaanxi, Li Zhanshu was transferred again to Heilongjiang to serve as Deputy Party Secretary and Vice Governor. By 2007, he had been hovering at the vice ministerial level for 14 years. He was already a young old cadre. Li Zhanshu, who was his age, was about to become head of the organisation department. Xi Jinping, a few years younger than him, was about to enter the Politburo Standing Committee. Many full ministers born in the 1952 already existed. Comrade Li Zhanshu had fallen behind in this leg of the official race. It can be said with certainty that up to that point, Li Zhanshu did not have particularly solid ties with the central leadership of the time. He had no roots among the older generation of Zhang Lizhu, and among the newer Hu and Zheng Jie generation, he was not their own people either. And with the then organisation minister Zheng Qinghong, he still had no personal relationship. Between him and Hu Jintao, there was no direct communication channel anymore. Hu still had a decent impression of him, but they had not been in touch for many years. If there were no turning point, 7-year-old Li Zhanshu would soon have to consider retirement, and indeed he had considered it. In short, over those 14 plus years, Li Zhanshu had no major achievements that could be loudly advertised. He could only be described as an ordinary vice ministerial level official with nothing particularly astonishing. No matter how many ideas he had inside, without an independent platform, he could not do anything big. In October 2007, the 17th Party Congress was held, and Li Zhanshu took office as head of the organisation department. As mentioned earlier, during Li Zhanshu's tenure as Hebei Youth League Secretary, Li Zhanshu served as a Youth League Central Secretariat member, and the two interacted and associated a great deal. At this time, Hu Jintao, now in his second term, had already begun to face a situation where Jiang Zemin had ceded him a considerable amount of power, especially at the provincial and ministerial level, whose appointment power could be described as final. As long as Shanghai did not strongly object, Li Zhanshu's staffing followed Hu and Ling closely. Xi Jinping had no say at all. Xi Jinping's best university classmate Chen Xi, in order to solve the problem of getting a full ministerial post, went from Tsinghua to the Ministry of Education and then to Liaoning without success. In the end, it was only at CAST China Association for Science and Technology that he resolved it. At this time, Hu Jintao began to face a shortage of people. There was no shortage of ordinary people. What was lacking were reliable people, people of known background, with sufficient resumes. Li Zhanshu fit this standard perfectly. 14 years as a vice ministerial official, a former youth league cadre many years before, governance experience across North China, the Northwest, and the Northeast, a decent reputation, and he was already Heilongjiang's deputy party secretary and vice governor. What he lacked was simply someone to recommend him in front of Hu Jintao. Li Zhanshu played exactly that role, and he was also head of the organisation department. Li Zhanshu soon had a new development period. In month, Heilongjiang Governor Zhang Zuoji retired. Li Zhanshu, as Deputy Party Secretary and Executive Vice Governor, promptly moved up in sequence to become governor, solving the full ministerial rank. At that time, people generally counted Li Zhanshu as part of the Youth League faction. Indeed, without help from the Youth League faction, Li Zhanshu would have had no way to take the governor's position. Li Zhanshu also maintained close interactions with many people from the Youth League background. But Li Zhanshu was not a core member of the Youth League faction, and his style of dealing with people only looked similar to the Youth League faction on the surface underneath. It was actually quite different. After all, Li Zhanshu's time at the Hebei Youth League was short. Most of his political energy was still spent in local government. Heilongjiang has never been a good place for officials. The greatest significance of Heilongjiang for Governor Li Zhanshu was that it allowed him to meet one of the most important friends of his life. The Heilongjiang man and business group figure Dai Yonga. Boss Dai started in Harbin, making a business out of converting air raid shelters into underground shopping malls. Later, Renhei Commercial was listed in Hong Kong. Boss Dai had a magical ability. After getting to know Zheng Wei, he came to know Vice President Zheng Qinghong, became good friends with him and could influence him. Other people such as Tomorrow Group Xiao Jinhua were only good friends with Zheng Wei, but were powerless with Vice President Zheng. This was Boss Dai's core competitive advantage. Zheng Wei later settled in Australia with his wife and basically stopped meddling in mainland business and no longer cooperated with Xiao Jinhua and others. The only public position Zheng Wei's wife Jiang Mei held was as a director of the listed Renhei Group. One can see that Dai Fatty's close ties with the Zheng family were not widely known at the time. And in the first few years after Li Zhanshu arrived in Heilongjiang, he also could not accomplish much. The one thing that left an impression was that Governor Li's posture was relatively low. He interacted more with large private enterprises and was willing to help companies solve problems, gradually becoming friends with Boss Dai. In 2010, a political earthquake happened in faraway Guizhou. Party Secretary Xi Jinping and Governor Lin Zhanshu completely fell out. Secretary Xi came from the propaganda system and did not really understand the economy. On top of that, he was close to retirement age, his health was not good, and he did not want to do anything. Every day, other than checking Weibo and reading documents, he just thought about how to bring down Lin Zhanshu. Governor Lin came from Guangdong, and his entire development approach was completely different from the Times. The two had reached the point of throwing ashtrays at each other face to face during meetings. Subordinates had no idea what to do, and the entire Guizhou political scene fell into chaos. The centre decided to give each of them 50 board strikes and let them retire together. So who would come to clean up the mess? Li Yuanchao thought of Comrade Li Zhanshu, who was good at uniting people and never takes people down, and paired him with Governor Zhao Kezi from the developed region of Jiangsu. What outsiders did not know was that the two of them were sent to Guizhou as a firefighting team. Even Li Zhanshu himself did not expect this appointment. Perhaps his own plan was to later take over as Heilongjiang party secretary and then retire. During the 2008 two sessions, a reporter asked Li Zhanshu, after retirement, "What do you most want to do?" Li Zhanshu answered, "I still have a few years before retirement, but I'm already thinking about what to do after retirement. I want, after retirement, to continue in Heilongjiang and do charitable work for the people of Heilongjiang." Of course, politicians' words, just listen and let it pass. Don't take them too seriously. At the farewell meeting in Heilongjiang, Li Zhanshu said, "In this life, I will forever be a Longjiang person." The next day, he arrived in Guizhou, and he said, "From now on, I will forever be a Guizhou person." For the past several decades, Guizhou had long been a grey zone on the national provincial economic map. Although it truly existed, few people cared about its future prospects. Li Zhanshu and Zhao Kezi not only had to rectify the local political ecology, but also had to achieve leapfrog development. The difficulty was enormous. For this staffing choice, the organisation department should be considered to have scored points. As soon as he took office, Li Zhanshu emphasised the need to build a good political ecology, meaning stop internal dojone. He and Zhao Kezi also displayed unprecedented unity. The two often attended activities together, and together they visited 9 prefectures and cities for research. Guizhou is poor, but it has 3 treasures. Li Zhanshu also played 3 cards. Guizhou's first treasure is poverty. Poverty is Guizhou's weakness and also its advantage. Because it is poor, expectations are low, it is easy to produce achievements and easy to create the image of someone who can do things and dares to do things. If you do well, it is all your performance. If you do poorly, it does not matter. After all, the foundation is bad. The strong industry province big investment attraction movement was Li Zhanshu's first card. On the 26th of December 2010, Guizhou married into 108 central enterprises, including industry leaders such as Sinopec, aviation industry, China Electronics, and China Aluminum. 47 major projects totaled nearly 300 billion RMB, becoming the largest investment attraction action in Guizhou's history up to that point. They also led delegations to Hong Kong, the Yangtze River Delta, the Pearl River Delta, and also to the southwest, the northwest, and even the northeast to attract investment and big investment attraction campaign. Of course, this kind of signing is just a campaign of showmanship. Thousands of billions on paper, and no one knows how many billions actually land. At that time, Chongqing's Sing Red, Strike Black, and Guangdong's Empty the Cage for New Birds were in full swing. People's attention was focused on the 2 political stars, Bo Xilai and Wang Yang. Few people noticed Li Zhanshu in the remote mountain areas. No one could have imagined that the then unknown Li Zhanshu would in the future surpass those 2 political stars and become a heavyweight in Chinese politics. Guizhou's second treasure is people. There are people above. Hu Jintao once governed here and personally established the Beijing experimental zone. In Hu Jintao's heart, there has always been a Beijing complex, and even after entering the centre, he paid special attention to Beijing. In December 2012, After stepping down as General Secretary, Hu Jintao's first inspection trip was to Beijing, and the person accompanying him was Comrade Li Zhanshu. Li Zhanshu deeply understood the essentials of officialdom. He worked hard on the Beijing experimental zone and the scientific outlook on development, investing resources at any cost to build the Beijing experimental zone. And he was keeping a high profile in summarizing the Beijing experimental zone's experience, all for the purpose of letting Hu Jintao see that he was faithfully inheriting Hu's political legacy, successfully drawing Hu Jintao's attention and recognition. Guizhou's third treasure is liquor, Moutai. Among the top CCP leadership, anyone who likes drinking has no one who does not like Moutai, except Comrade Hu Jintao, whose health is not good. For example, after retiring, General Secretary Jiang would still drink 1 or 2 small cups of Moutai when he was happy. Xi Jinping's alcohol capacity is said to dominate the Jianghu. On the day he took over as chairman of the Central Military Commission, it is said he happily drank a bottle of Moutai. Li Botan, the son-in-law of Jia Qinglin, once cooperated with Moutai to establish a club called the Moutai Club, located at Chang'an Streets, Nanchizi, in Changpu River Park. Zhongban was just nearby. Jack Ma and Jiang Zemin's grandson were also frequent visitors of the Moutai Club. Moutai is an expensive liquor elsewhere. For Guizhou, it is just a local specialty. Elsewhere, giving Moutai is corruption. When Guizhou leaders go out and give Moutai, it is giving local specialty just a small token of sincerity. As for the insider stories around Moutai, there is no need to even start. We will talk about it another day. During this period, from May 8 to 11, 2011, Xi Jinping visited Guizhou for 4 days in his capacity as a Politburo Standing Committee member and Secretary of the Secretariat. Li Zhanshu set aside all work and accompanied him throughout the trip, and during the visit he also had a private long talk with Xi Jinping. Time moved into 2012. The world-watching 18th Party Congress was about to be held. At that point, Li Zhanshu probably did not have many thoughts of his own. The best exit he could imagine was likely to be promoted before retirement to a vice chairman of the NPC or a vice chair of the CPPCC, securing a sub-national level retirement remuneration because his experience among the country's provincial chiefs was not outstanding. However, life once again surprised him. After the Baofusi Bridge crash incident was exposed, it was no longer appropriate for Ling Jihua to continue working in the General Office. An appropriate replacement was urgently needed. And on the eve of the 18th Congress transition, it was not easy to find a General Office director. First, at that time, Hu Jintao was still General Secretary and the General Office still had to serve him for a few more months. Therefore, the new director had to obtain Hu's approval. Second, a few months later, the transition would occur and Xi Jinping would take power. One could not replace the director again after just a few months. That would not be conducive to policy and personnel stability. Therefore, the new director better could continue into the years after the transition, and therefore had to obtain Xi's approval as well. Third, at that time, the boss and highest decision-maker was still Jiang Zemin, and the General Office director involved the implementation and execution of his will. Ling Jihua's incident had already made him very angry. Therefore, the new director also had to obtain Jiang's approval and could not repeat Ling Jihua's fiasco. So the new director had to simultaneously obtain the approval of Jiang, Hu, and Xi, 3 sides, all finding the choice acceptable. This director also had to be at the full ministerial level or above, understand Chinese politics sufficiently, have enough coordination, ability, command respect, and also get the 3 sides to rank her at the same time. That required someone in the middle to separately persuade the 3 sides and get them to accept the plan. One can imagine how difficult this selection was. For many years, Li Zhanshu's image was that of a down-to-earth person, a decent man, someone who could suffer grievances, someone who does not take people down and yet can unite people, not taking people down, not playing slick tricks, not lazy. These were Li Zhanshu's living principles. He had governing experience across 4 provinces, from county party secretary to prefectural commissioner to municipal party secretary and provincial party secretary. In terms of hardware, he met the requirements for General Office director. Of course, there were several other people who also had the hardware, so why him? Li Zhanshu had once been a youth league cadre. Although he did not have much direct interaction with Hu, because they entered the youth league system around the same time, Li Zhanshu had many interactions with Hu's subordinates. In addition, Hu had overseen the organisation work for young Gamba for many years, so Hu had known him since early days, and Li Zhanshu's work in Guizhou had also earned Hu's recognition. For Hu, Li Zhanshu was a youth league person acceptable. For Xi Jinping, Li Zhanshu was his buddy of decades. Every year they would drink heavily together a few times, and Xi also highly recognised Li Zhanshu's abilities. But for Jiang and Zheng, there was no prior connection with Li Zhanshu, and it still required someone else to vouch for him. The key question was, who would vouch, who would go talk to the leaders, and talk to whom? That was the key issues. One could not have Li Zhanshu go talk himself. At this point, the key figure appeared. He was crucial, and yet he was also inconspicuous. He was Dai Yonga, mentioned earlier. At that time, Dai Fatty keenly realised this was Li Zhanshu's opportunity and also his own big opportunity in life. After communicating with Li Zhanshu and reaching an understanding, he went to chat with Zheng Qinghong and recommended Li Zhanshu. By then, Zheng had actually been observing Li Zhanshu for a period. After comparing options, he also felt Li Zhanshu was a good candidate, so Zheng stepped in to communicate with Jiang, Xi, and Hu. At that time, no one yet dared to disregard him. Jiang had always trusted him completely. Xi at that time was his little brother. As for Hu, between Li Zhanshu and Hu, there was their own communication channel. Thus, Li Zhanshu became the executive deputy director presiding over the general office's work, and 2 months later formally became the general office director. This is not a fabricated story. This is the real operating process. Before this, no one imagined Li Zhanshu would become general office director. After this, very few people understood the reason behind it. I learnt of the behind-the-scenes operating process by a coincidence of circumstances. Many CCP decisions are made in exactly this way. Personnel appointments in the CCP have always been a black box. Very few people know the truth behind the scenes. These top-level personnel decisions are definitely not produced inside organisation department documents. They are produced through under-the-table bargaining, negotiation, and gaming among a small number of decision makers. The more important the position, the more sensitive the moment, the more complex it is. For example, the decision after the Cultural Revolution to arrest the Gang of Four by force, although later propaganda made it sound grand and lofty at the time, it was negotiation and gaming among several big figures, with those half-grown children from those families passing messages in between. In this incident, Dai Yonga was that liaison. One should not overestimate his role, and one also should not underestimate his role. In the future stories, I will also introduce the love-hate entanglements among three big shots: Xu Ming, the white glove of the Bo Xilai family, Hu Jintao's less-known daughter Liu Shuimei, and her good friend Guan Guoliang. Thank you for watching.